Hello, everyone. My name is Beth Deathredge, and I'm the CEO of Momenta. We are a marketing agency with 2 locations in Martinsville and Danville, Virginia. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about virtual fatigue. I'm going to try to keep this presentation short as I don't want to contribute to the problem. But do you find yourself looking like this at the end of your workday, or maybe even after just one Zoom call? If so, then you may suffer from virtual fatigue. What is virtual fatigue? You might be asking yourself. It's commonly referred to as Zoom fatigue, but I didn't want to be brand specific. And it's the exhaustion you feel after any form of virtual interaction. There are some common indicative behaviors that you can ask yourself, do I have these? And then if so, it may be a sign that you currently suffer from virtual fatigue. Do you find yourself trying to avoid, cancel, or reschedule meetings? Now, this doesn't mean anytime. There's always been a meeting we didn't want to attend or dreaded going to. But if you find this is a common problem where you will rework your schedule and you just dread it with every fiber of your being, then that's a problem. Do you feel tense or tired after virtual meetings in a way you didn't prior to the pandemic when you met in person? And do you find it harder to multitask? This means, can you not do anything but pay attention to the meeting? And if you do have to shift gears, are you able to come back to the meeting? If this is a problem for you, then you may have virtual fatigue. There are symptoms. Apathy, exhaustion, forgetfulness, difficulty concentrating, irritability, and physical discomfort are all signs of virtual fatigue. So apathy is just the feeling of indifference or a lacking of emotion. The biggest concern for virtual fatigue is that it can lead to real burnout, and real burnout can lead to depression. And so you need to be paying attention to whether or not you feel apathy. If you do not feel happiness, joy, anger, regular everyday emotions, then you need to ask yourself if something is wrong. Also, just general exhaustion, overall fatigue. This can be both mental and physical. Do you feel tired in a way you didn't think possible? I remember when we first came out for quarantine and I started working from home all the time, I thought, how is it possible that I am doing significantly less activity and feel significantly more tired? It just didn't make sense to me, but it is a common problem. Also forgetfulness. I can't relate to this one, as unfortunately I suffered from it prior to the pandemic. It's a common joke in my office that I could have a meeting and I can be in that meeting with one of my coworkers and say, I'm going to send you that email as soon as I get back to my office. And I will walk 10 steps back to my office and have forgotten to send that email. And then my coworker will politely send me a reminder email an hour later saying, were you going to send me that email? So if you were forgetful prior to the pandemic, this may not be a good measurement for you, but if you weren't, then pay attention. Do you have difficulty concentrating? And again, this is more about shifting gears. Can you do a Zoom meeting, participate, and then go back to your everyday work assignments, complete your task? Or is it really hard for you to shift gears and still pay attention? Do you find that you're more irritable? Just like overall, your temperament is not good. You have a shorter fuse. I thrive off of interaction with people. Normally it makes me happy and joyous, and it's my favorite part of my job. But I have noticed since the pandemic started, and I've been 100% remote, that I am more irritable. And there's some clients I try to avoid because I worry about conflict and my temperament. Unfortunately, my family bears the brunt of that burden because that's who I see every day. So I'm more likely to yell at my 8-year-old or my fiance. So pay attention because it's important that we don't take it out on people that we love. And unfortunately, that is who we are taking it out on because that is who we are around the most. And then actual physical discomfort. Prior to the pandemic, even if you had a job that you worked in front of a desk or in front of a computer at your desk all day, you still had movement, right? Hopefully you took a lunch break and sometimes you had to shift into the conference room. Maybe you had to go leave to meet with a client or just go get to the water cooler to refill your cup. And that allowed you to have some movement, some body motion. But when I first started working at home, I was shocked at how I could sit in front of my desk almost the entire day about moving. And then when I stood up, I could feel it in my legs. And so that causes true physical pain. If you feel much muscle tension, neck or back pain, if you have trouble sleeping, those are actual physical signs that you suffer from virtual fatigue. And you may be wondering, why is virtual meeting so much more challenging? We've been meeting with people in person our whole lives, but why is this more difficult? Well, there's actually several reasons why. The first one is we rely heavily on social cues. I can tell from your body language typically, or your smile, if you are happy, engaged, if you really want to quit talking to me because you are bored and you want to go home. And you can't do that on Zoom because you can't see so much of the human. And even the part you can see is minimal. So social cues are really important for us. Second is eye contact. We like to think that we make eye contact, and I know that they teach us in business school and in classes that you want to make good, strong eye contact with people when you talk to them, but in reality, we don't. We look at their hands. I know I look at people's mouths a lot when I speak to them, but we also reference whatever our conversation is about. So if we're in a room, maybe we're looking at our idea board, or maybe we're looking at a product for inspiration or ideas, or maybe we're talking about the person on the other side of the room and we're looking at them. But wherever we're looking, it's not in each other's eyes. Then there are technology challenges that come with the Zoom conferences. I'm sure that all of us have been on a meeting where someone was talking and then they froze. And then we had no idea what they said. And they didn't realize they froze. So they expected us to respond. And then we have to politely say, can you please repeat because you froze? And it just slows the speed of the meeting. It's kind of makes us disconnect. We have appearance challenges as well. So we've always had appearance challenges. It's important to look a certain way at the office. So now we have that on screen, but now we also have to worry about how our home looks in the background, because that's where you're probably working. Whether you're in an office, a study, at your kitchen table, in your bedroom, it's an extra pressure that looks good behind us as well as we look good on the screen. So I have found a handy trick for this. I put this background up with my company name on it for every single meeting so that you can't tell that my bed is not currently made, and honestly is never made. And that's just how I live. And that has really eased some of the pressure for me. So tip one. Then there is home life interference. And this is just, we live at home, and at home we have interference. Every meeting we have somebody's kid that comes in and asks a question. The dog is barking, the doorbell rings because your 9th Amazon package of the week has arrived. And that interrupts the meeting. And even though we've all been the person that's interrupted it, we feel embarrassed. And even though it's just a normal part of life, it does disrupt the meeting and it does disrupt the flow. And that makes it more challenging to have real human connection. And then lastly is limited commentary. So in a natural meeting environment, we have a back and forth, a conversation. I say something and then it makes you think of something to say. And that is how the conversation moves forward. But in a Zoom platform, we can't do that because we would be interrupting each other all the time, possibly with lagging technology time. So it's really messy. And so instead we have to wait our turn, which is good in theory. And honestly, sometimes does make meetings shorter and more on topic. But what it also does is it limits some of our creativity. So I know as a human that I'm 100% guilty of you saying something and me thinking about what I'm going to respond even before you finish. And that's not a good trait, but I still do it. And I know lots of other people do. And if I don't say that thought, as soon as you say yours, then I'm either going to forget it, or in 15 minutes, when it's my turn to speak on Zoom platform, it won't be relevant anymore to the conversation because we've moved past it. So it's a missed opportunity. It's a missed creative chance. So those are just some of the common everyday challenges we face on the Zoom platform or any, online platform that we don't have in person. So when I was putting this presentation together, I wondered how extroverts perform versus introverts, because I am a true extrovert and I really like being around people. And if I'm not feeling good or my energy is lacking, I could go to a party or a gathering and I get kind of like a social high. So I would think that I would enjoy having this as an option to be around people. But then in the same light, I thought, well, introverts don't enjoy being around people as much, so maybe they'll prefer this platform. But it turns out statistically, both personalities prefer to socialize in person for different reasons. And there are always exceptions, but overall, everyone prefers in-person gatherings. So let's look at why the impact is on extroverts. So as an extrovert, I can speak very confidently from these. And one is we need the body language. It's one of our strengths is reading the social cues and knowing how to respond. And when you are on Zoom, we lose all of those cues and it makes us feel inadequate, honestly, because we don't know how to read you. It requires more focus. So a really good extrovert is somebody that is quick on their feet and can think of things in a moment's notice. And you can't do that in Zoom. I can't fake my way through a meeting if I miss the point, because I can't look to the guy to my right and be like, what did I miss? Or I can't defer to 2 steps back when Bill said, well, when Bill previously said blah, 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 because it's the spotlight is on me. And if I haven't been paying attention, it is going to be very obvious. It's less rewarding for extroverts because we naturally respond to human interaction and we like a lot of stimuli. And then we prefer a less controlled environment. I say that we are the lovers of chaos, right? We don't want the rules. I don't want to have to raise my hand to say what I'm thinking. I don't want to have to type in the Q&A. God forbid somebody beat me to the question I had thought of. That's just not how an extrovert thrives. There are some tips to help extroverts specifically. One is bigger screens. Make your screen bigger, make your sound louder, because that's the kind of stimuli you need. And then also don't be afraid to do things with your hands. Years ago, I took a class, some training courses from a company, and they provided us like Rubik's cubes and little squishy balls, things that we could distract ourselves with our hands so that we could listen better with our ears. We are afraid to do that on Zoom calls because we feel like it looks like we're not paying attention. But in real life, you take notes in a meeting. On Zoom, you should also be taking notes in the meeting. So impact on introverts is slightly different. It turns out introverts are just hypercritical of themselves and of their social performance, and they are easily embarrassed. In Zoom, you feel like you are on the spotlight all the time. And if you are the person whose dog barks or kid interrupts, then it's mortifying for you. They also don't like to feel like everybody is watching them, and they prefer one-to-one interaction. They do better in smaller groups because large groups are, just more draining. And I have been on some Zoom calls with over 170 people. And, that's just not going to happen in a normal environment, but we can open it to the whole world. So we think the more the merrier, but that's not how an introvert responds. They see 171 people and it makes it a miserable experience for them. And then the online challenges that causes some of the disruption is just more difficult for them to recover from in general. So things that they can do to make it easier for them to do well in this environment is to utilize the Q&A feature to type out their questions. If they want to ask a question in the middle of a statement, maybe they don't interrupt the way a rude extrovert like myself would, but they use the raise the hand feature. And then maybe try not to attend meetings where 170 people are on there, or don't try to be the main voice when you do. There are some groups that are more high risk than others. So the essential worker is high risk. This is anyone that provides an essential service and does not have flexibility in their jobs. So while I work 100% from home and I am in front of my computer all day, my job offers a lot of flexibility. I can take a break and I can take a long lunch. I can go for a walk, or I can watch an episode of The Office, Whatever I need to do to decompress, I have that flexibility in my job. But essential workers like teachers, telehealth providers, social services providers, they have to be online and available for those normal hours of their working day. So 7 to 3 o'clock for teachers, they have to be on there available to children, and they don't have that flexibility. So all of the stress that we just talked about that comes from virtual interaction, they feel it that entire workday. Parents, specifically with school-age children, are more high risk to have virtual fatigue. And this is just because we're wearing a lot of hats, right? So not only are you doing your job primarily remote, but you're also helping your child with virtual schooling. And then you're still expected to clean your house and cook your meals and interact with your relatives also online. And so it just adds an extra layer. Women in general are more self-conscious about their appearance, and so this makes them more high risk to suffer from virtual fatigue. And then lastly, the shared workspace. So this is the people that live in studio apartments or just have a lot of family members. If you don't have the luxury of having a separate office space, if your child's desk is in the same room as your desk, then that's a tight working space, and then you have to overcome each other's obstacles. So every one of these is a high risk group. And keep in mind that some people fit in every single one of these groups. So you can be an essential worker who is also a parent to a school-age child, but happens to be a woman and has a shared working space with their husband or their child or their partner. And so we need to be more forgiving and understanding to those people that they have a lot going on and that they are not perfect. And we need to be more forgiving for ourselves if we fit in these groups as too. Like, our expectation of perfection is too great. So what are some things we can do to help prevent virtual fatigue, prevent it or overcome it? One, skip live meetings. If you're watching me talk right now, you are watching a pre-recorded meeting, and congratulations, you've made a smart decision, because this will help eliminate virtual fatigue, because you can pause me at any time or just turn me off completely. Two, if you need a break, take a break. Maybe be conscientious about how you use this. I was very lucky to recently work with a new client, and we had extremely long virtual meetings. Sometimes they exceeded 2 hours. And once I just needed to step away to use the bathroom, and I thought, well, I'll just turn off my camera and step away, and then I'll come back and it will be seamless. But as soon as I turned off that camera, I heard them say my name, Beth. Well, I guess we'll get Beth's thoughts on that when she returns. And then it sounded like I was being irresponsible and I wasn't paying attention. So it would have been more effective, I believe, if I would have maybe sent a message that says, I need to step away from my computer right now. So take a break if you need a break, but maybe communicate that you were taking a break so it doesn't look like you just pieced out completely. 3, don't use the video if you don't want to use the video, if you can get away with not using the video. We had lots of conversations prior to the pandemic where we didn't look at each other, and we can keep having those conversations. So if it makes you feel more comfortable to turn your video off, I think you'll be surprised at how comfortable people are with that. Earlier in the pandemic, I was not feeling very well and I still had to work. And so there were several meetings I just told my clients, my coworkers, like, hey, I'm not going to turn my video on because I'm not feeling so well. And they were all super understanding. And some of them were grateful. Now, I would say that if everyone else has their video on, you should let them know ahead of time if you're not going to participate, because that's a different pressure if they feel like they have to have theirs on and you don't. So just be courteous and considerate of others. 4, try to have some virtual fun. Everything should not be work related. If you have friends that are out of town, maybe have a happy hour. You can do a live streaming group, maybe do a fun Oscar party streaming online, just something that you enjoy in the virtual world. That way every experience doesn't feel like a negative association or a burden. 5 is kind of like turn off your meeting. Do audio meetings. You don't have to look at each other. We did a lot of work through conference calls, but now it's like, because we have the technology and we know how to use it, we feel like every meeting has to be face to face, and it just doesn't. And I think you'll find that they are faster if you stick to the audio version. So whenever you can, just turn that that video off completely and go back to the old school telephone. And adjust your schedule to where you feel comfortable. Now, everybody's job is different and you may not have control of your scheduling, but if you do, then you should try to schedule them when you feel you're at your best, right? So like, I'm not a very good morning person, and my son has to be online by 9. So I try not to schedule anything prior to 10 a.m. if I can avoid it, because that gives me time to get up, get functioning, and make sure that he's settled, to try to prevent those life interruptions that are so common nowadays. And then I think, like almost every human, I kind of have an afternoon lag. So I try not to do anything after 4. So 10 to 2 is my ideal window, and I schedule everything when I can around that. But of course, you have to schedule some meetings outside of your comfort zone. And if a client wants to meet with me at 5:30, I absolutely take that 5:30 meeting. But when you have the ability to make the schedule, you should do it. 7, incorporate physical activity. I think this is the most important one that all of us need to do. And I kind of knew immediately that I needed to incorporate this in my life within like a week from working at home. Because prior to the pandemic, I left my office a lot. I went on site with clients a lot, and I walked up and down 26 steps every time. And so I got this physical exercise in this break, and I would average 6,000 steps in a regular day. But working at home, I'm lucky to hit 2,000 steps if I don't make myself work out, because I just sit in one place. My house is only so big, so I only have to travel so much distance. So it is really important for our mental health to take the break. So go outside, get the vitamin D, you need the sunlight. And then maybe consider investing in a stand-up desk so you can sit down and stand up. I myself actually have a mobile desk, which is great because I can change my workspace slightly. If I want to work at my desk, I can. If I want to work in my recliner, I can. If I want to work in my bed, which I don't recommend, I can. And then my favorite thing to do is I actually use it on my treadmill. I walk at a slower pace so I don't kill myself. But it's really made a big difference. That's when I answer my emails. It's when I make calls to my coworkers because they don't care if I sound breathless. And then one thing that I'm not very good at, but they recommend, is maybe doing mini workout sessions where I try to make sure I have 30 to 45 minutes a day to do that. Instead of doing it all in one chunk, you should do 10 minutes over several hours of the day. Which is more like what your office environment would be if you went to and from meetings. So can't stress it enough, physical activity is an absolute must. If you're not doing it, start doing it immediately. Number 8 is define your spaces. Your workspace should feel like work, and your relaxed space should feel like your relaxed space, which is why I don't recommend taking your mobile desk to the bed. I'm not great at separating my spaces. There are 5 people in my houses, and 3 of us are working from home. So mine is in my bedroom, but I have tried very hard to put all my work stuff on my desk. I've tried to separate the room into 2 parts. So you just need to make your workspace feel like a workspace instead of like your home. And then that way you can still enjoy being at home later when you're watching TV or playing with your kids or just sitting around drinking a glass or a bottle of wine. And then number 9, avoid back-to-back meetings. We feel this pressure because we're home and we're in this one place that we have to do everything every second of the day for 8 consecutive hours. And that's just not real life. Before the pandemic, if we had a meeting at one location, we had to pack up, leave, travel to the next location for the next meeting. So even if we had back-to-back meetings all day, we had travel time. We probably budgeted time to stop at the restroom, to grab our lunch. And we need to apply that same logic to our virtual meetings that we applied to our in-person meetings. So some of us can only control so much of our work environment. But if you are a manager, I want to talk about some things you can do to make it easier on your team to work remote. and help prevent the virtual fatigue phenomenon. One, minimize virtual meetings. This goes back to every meeting doesn't have to be virtual. Don't make an email a meeting. Just send the email, because email goes back and forth. You can send 10 emails and it will still be faster than a virtual meeting. Don't surprise schedule your team with a meeting. Don't be the boss that's like, hey, in 30 minutes, we're all going to need to be online. Because you know what? If I had that entire day free, if I didn't think I had a single virtual meeting, my hair is probably in a messy bun and I might still be wearing my pajamas. And you have just put undue, unexpected stress on me. Consider team-wide quiet hours. A lot of large companies were actually doing this before the pandemic, and they're just recommending that everyone sort of adopt this. And this is different depending on what kind of industry you're in. But if you work with a team, like a project team, and you meet several times a day, then you say, look, from 10 to 12, we're not going to have any meetings. And in that window of time, you get a break, you get a virtual break, and you can catch up on the actual work, the busy work that we all have to do. Or maybe that's when you take your walk. But just knowing that you have that free 2-hour window can be extremely relaxing. If you're going to have a meeting, provide an agenda. What are we talking about? Don't have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. They're not. And we all know that we had those meetings before the pandemic, but we definitely don't need them during the pandemic. So my office has a team meeting every Tuesday. Sometimes it gets moved to Thursday. And we try to follow a specific outline so that everyone knows what to expect. We do think it's important to have a team meeting so that we can keep feeling connected as a unit, since we're all working in different locations. So at the beginning of each meeting, we say how our week is going. We take turns. If there's an anecdote you want to share, you can. Sometimes it's just still in a pandemic, nothing new to share. Then we celebrate any victories we had during the week. Did we land a new client? Did we launch a new website? Did we finish a branding rollout? And we take turns kind of recognizing those accomplishments. Then we outline any challenges. Is anyone mad at us? Did we mess anything up? Did we miss a deadline? Then we talk about individual assignments. And if anyone on the team has a question about their project, we come up with a solution together as a unit. And then we summarize it. Any like final thoughts, and then we move on. We close out the meeting. And sometimes those meetings last longer than an hour, but at least everybody on the team knows what to expect and how to prepare for it. Try to follow start and end times. So if you say that you're going to have a 1-hour meeting, have a 1-hour meeting, or better yet, have a 55-minute meeting. Same thing. If you say you're going to have a 30-minute, have a 30-minute meeting. Now, I've been to some meetings where people are really good at this. Almost to a point, it can be rude, but I would rather you be a little bit rude and get me out on time than just keep the conversation going for the sake of conversation going. And then lastly, do not make all social activities required. I think it's great that companies are trying to get each other together and still do fun things while in a pandemic. My best friend's company has a virtual happy hour, and they'll play trivia or have to tell little, facts about themselves. She'll draw their name out of a bucket and they have to answer, but they don't have to come. If they have something else going on, they can leave, whatever is considered important to them. If you're an introvert that's exhausted and suffering from virtual fatigue, the last thing you need to do is try to show up to a mandatory activity and act like you're having a good time. So just don't be that manager. So because this is a pre-recorded meeting, you can't ask me questions in person, but you are welcome to send me any questions at beth@memento.agency or attend the actual Q&A, live Q&A on May 1st. I look forward to seeing you all then.